I'm Keith. I work for a general company as an employee. I'm not really on a fast track to promotion, but I do my job reasonably well. I'm about to turn 40. However, my love life is completely non-existent. I've become accustomed to living alone. I did have normal relationships when I was 20, but nothing really worked out, and after I turned 30, I sort of gave up. My focus shifted more toward my work, and before I knew it, I was almost 40. I don't particularly mind being single, but I do hope to have a family someday. I'm living quite casually, but my parents, especially my mom, worry about me being single. My mom keeps telling me, "It's high time you think about getting married." Thanks to my sister and her husband, who have 3 children, my parents aren't expecting me to get married and show them grandchildren, but they do wish I had someone by my side. Concerned that I show no signs of such companionship, my mom offered, "If you're not going to find someone, there's this matchmaking proposition. How about it?" But honestly, I don't like matchmaking meetings. A few years back, I agreed to one thinking it would be a new experience, but I didn't like the forced atmosphere, and since then, I've been refusing every time, saying I'd find someone on my own. So, I refused this time too, but my mom persisted. "You're turning 40, you know. If you keep this up, you'll be alone forever. Being able to live alone might be good, but having someone special is wonderful, don't you think?" She kept insisting, and wouldn't drop the subject. She was so persistent that I ended up lying. "I do have someone. Well, we're not talking marriage or anything yet, so I didn't want to get your hopes up. I was planning to tell you once things were more settled." Hearing this, my mom was overjoyed, insisting that she wouldn't believe it until she sees her. She seemed elated with the prospect of me having a girlfriend, and expecting me to bring her over sometime. I found myself saying, "We haven't discussed marriage, so as long as you don't mention unnecessary things." It was a spur-of-the-moment lie, but my mom is really looking forward to it, constantly asking when is she coming, through emails and calls. I shouldn't have lied. Opening my email during my lunch break at work, there was another message from my expectant mom. "I'm in a bind," I unintentionally muttered. With a heavy sigh and my eyes closed, Michelle spoke to me. "What happened? You look distressed. Did you make a mistake?" Michelle is a junior colleague I often team up with. She's beautiful and has a bright and refreshing personality, and she's very competent, a reliable person. We don't usually share personal stories, but hoping for a laugh, I shared my situation with her. I accidentally said I have someone, and my mom got really happy. This is troublesome. Scratching my head and giving a powerless ha-ha, I tried to laugh it off. Michelle laughed too. "What are you doing?" But looking at her, I had a naughty thought. Well, that would be too much, wouldn't it? What I was thinking inadvertently slipped out. "What is it?" She laughed. For a moment, I thought maybe you could pretend to be my girlfriend, but no, it's just a joke. I do have some crazy thoughts, don't I? I apologized and laughed, expecting her to laugh it off and scold me for the joke. But instead of laughing, she began to think aloud. Thinking that perhaps my joke had gone too far, I decided to apologize sincerely and was about to speak when, "It's fine. Shall I go as your girlfriend?" she said with a smile. I emphasized that it was just a joke, but she went along with my idea. On the day I was supposed to introduce Michelle to my parents, I went to my parents' home in the morning. There is a station within walking distance, and I am supposed to pick Michelle up from the nearest station around 3 p.m. Apparently, she used to live around here and insisted that she didn't need to be picked up, but of course, I couldn't allow that. My mom, in front of me, who came home alone first, is looking excited and happy. "I wish the time would come sooner," she said, her smile never fading. Then, she nudged me with her elbow. "Don't you have a picture of her or something?" "You'll see her when she gets here," I replied. but I can't focus on my work. I'm so curious. You have one, right? Come on, show me, she said, peeking into my phone. All right, all right. I pretended to select a photo, but there were no photos of us together. It was unexpected. I need to find something. Frantically searching my phone, I remembered a photo taken at a social gathering which had been sent by a colleague. I edited the photo to make it look like I had taken it of her. When I showed it to Mom, she exclaimed, "Oh my, she's beautiful." But the next moment, but I feel like I've met her somewhere. I thought she must be mistaking Michelle for someone else, but then Mom exclaimed, "Ah, wait a minute, Keith. I think I might have met her before." She began her story. Mom had an accident a few years ago. She was riding her bike safely, but she fell over trying to avoid someone who suddenly appeared. The first one who rushed to her, asking, "Are you all right?" resembled Michelle. She immediately called an ambulance and my dad. Amidst the panic, she kept saying, "The ambulance will be here soon." She gathered Mom's belongings and handed them to the paramedics, staying until the ambulance left. Later, Mom wanted to properly thank her but couldn't find any leads and didn't get the chance. Looking at Michelle's photo, she said excitedly, "It has to be her." When it was time, I went to pick up Michelle from the station. On our walk home, I apologized to Michelle, "Sorry about today." Michelle cheerfully replied, "It's fine. You always help me out. Do you want me to be myself, or should I act like a good girlfriend? You can choose now," Michelle offered with a laugh. "I guess, act like a good girlfriend," I tried. "Like this," she said, making various gestures and poses to make me laugh. Soon, we arrived at my family home. "This is it," I said, and she stopped walking, looking surprised. "Wait, this place," Michelle muttered. I thought she was surprised it wasn't a regular house and explained, "Yeah, we run a diner. The back and upstairs are living spaces. Come on in." When we opened the door, my parents greeted us with, "Welcome. I'm sorry, is it okay to sit in the diner? Sorry for this inconvenience. Isn't it better in the back room? It's not decent for a beautiful young lady." Mom and Dad began fussing, but Michelle said, "It's fine here." We sat facing each other, but no one's gaze met. Mom was looking at Michelle, Michelle at Dad, and Dad was smiling at both of us alternately. However, Dad realized that Michelle was staring straight at him. Dad and I were puzzled. Then Michelle spoke up, "Excuse me," addressing to my dad. "Excuse me," before greetings. "Do you remember me?" Dad started to think, Michelle intervened quickly. "You helped me once before," and she started to relate the incident. Michelle, when she was a new employee, used to live in an apartment a bit ahead of this diner. On her way back from work, she was sure a man she didn't know was following her from the station. She was being stalked around that time. She noticed that he was unusually close and scared. She started to walk faster, but felt the sound of his footsteps coming closer. While she was wondering how far she should run, almost in tears, she saw my dad, just as he was closing up the diner. So, Michelle asked my dad for help. Dad hurriedly let Michelle inside the diner and went outside to confront the man who was probably approaching. The moment they made eye contact, that man ran away. Dad promptly called the police and protected Michelle until they arrived. My mom was out, working another job at that time, and couldn't be reached. On relatively quiet nights, she was working as a cashier at a local supermarket. Later, the stalker was caught, and Michelle quickly moved to a new apartment. Once, Michelle and her parents visited the diner to thank my parents, but my mom was out again, so she hasn't met Michelle. After expressing their gratitude, they all enjoyed my dad's signature meals and left. Hearing this story, Dad remembered. "I told you, right? It's the girl from that time. Dad, a bit excitedly, said to Mom, but hearing this, Mom got even more excited. Really? Oh wait, I think I've met you too. Wasn't it 5 years ago? When I fell off my bike and couldn't get up, Mom started telling Michelle about the incident. That time, I remember, it was me. I was walking down that street for work. Michelle also shared her side, confirming the consistency in their stories. I was also surprised. I was so stunned by the unexpected turn of events and I couldn't say a word. The four of us looked at each other and almost laughed by this coincidence. Eventually, the conversation grew but had to end after about an hour due to the preparation for the diner's night shift. We had a great time. My parents walked Michelle to the entrance with a smile, saying, "Come again." And I decided to take Michelle to the station. Thank you so much for today. Sorry to ask you being a replacement, it was helpful. As I expressed my thanks, Michelle also thanked me again and said she had a good time. And I was quite helped by her conversation skills. You managed to keep up with my parents' conversation well. You know, when they asked, "What do you like about me?" I told them not to ask unnecessary things. Sorry if that put you on the spot. Then she said, "I wasn't bothered at all. Besides, what I like about you is my true feeling," with a shy smile. Really, a bit taken aback, I hear. You are kind, reliable, and you never raise your voice or get mad. I respect you, Keith. I even think you're pretty cool. As Michelle continues. Suddenly hearing such things, I didn't know how to respond and mumbled, Is that so? Thank you, awkwardly. Watching me fumble my words, Michelle chuckled. Michelle laughed and said, "When we meet in casual clothes, it feels different." I felt Michelle's cheeks were a bit red. While I was thinking about it, Michelle looked back at me. I might not be able to say this when I see you at work, so I'll say it now. I'm interested in you, Keith. We were just at the ticket gate. I stopped and said, but Michelle said, "See you," and with a smile, quickly passed through the ticket gate. Before she disappeared from view, she turned around and waved at me with a smile. I was left in confusion. No way, I mean, such a thing. She is about 10 years younger than me. And there's no way such a beautiful girl would like someone like me. But was she implying that she likes me? It wasn't clear that I was muttering to myself or just thinking inside while I was heading to my parents' home. Arriving at my parents' home, when Mom saw me, she said, "What a good girl, take good care of her." However, still in turmoil, I could only reply, "Yeah," in a disheartened tone. "What are you daydreaming for? Oh, Keith, you're leaving soon, right? Take some side dish with you, I'll prepare them." Mom was saying something like that, but my head was filled with thoughts of Michelle. The next day, when I saw Michelle at the office, I couldn't look straight at her because the previous day has been on my mind. She, as always, greeted me cheerfully saying, "Good morning." Me, on the other hand, with my mind awhirl with fresh feelings of romance, kept looking up at the sky or at my computer screen, obviously scattered in my concentration. Before I knew it, it was time for field work, and I came to my senses at her energetic voice saying, "Keith, let's hit the road." I wondered if it had been a dream, seeing her interact normally, while I drove to the clients. Similarly, to my mental state, the sky gradually filled with looming rain clouds. And just as we arrived at the client's doorstep, a sudden, torrential downpour began. Unaware of the impending bad weather, and with both hands full of promotional goods, I had come out of the car without an umbrella. By the time we finished the work and were leaving, it was only drizzling, but the umbrella was still inside the car. Wondering what to do, Michelle said, "The rain is light, let's run to the parking lot," and she ran ahead. I followed her in a hurry, then suddenly, a scream, had echoed. Michelle was soaked. Because of the sudden rain, a truck had plunged into a puddle on the road, splashing muddy water all over Michelle. Quickly unlocking the car, we first got inside. Geez, unbelievable. I was trying to avoid getting wet," Michelle exclaimed. Having watched the whole incident, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. I'm so sorry." Trying hard to suppress my laughter to apologize, laughter still slipped through. "This is not the time to laugh. Oh no." I looked for something to wipe with in a hurry and handed a towel to Michelle. I opened another bag of towels, and seeing how soaked Michelle was, I said, "You're really soaked," and began patting and drying around her shoulders. I quickly pulled my hand away, though. Sorry. It was probably inappropriate for a male employee to touch a female one. Despite the situation, I became flustered at my own actions. The earlier laughter had relaxed the tension, but I realized my heart was pounding. I hadn't noticed as I was in a hurry to dry her, but at a glance, her blouse was see-through from the rain. She seemed to realize this as well. "Want to see more?" she said to me with a mischievous smile. "You might catch a cold, so wear my jacket for now." I handed my jacket to Michelle, trying to stay calm. However, it was not possible in such a condition. As it was nearing evening, I decided to drive her home as she was. Remembering the earlier pounding of my heart, I didn't know what to talk about while driving her, and for a while, a silent time flowed. However, I couldn't help but think about what happened yesterday. About yesterday. I tried to start the conversation, but I was clearly nervous and stuttering. Feeling embarrassed and looking forward, I felt her gaze from the side. When we stopped at a traffic light, I looked sideways and she was staring at me, waiting for the next words. "I mean, you said you were interested in..." "No, never mind, sorry." Right before I finished the sentence, I thought it can't be. Then, Michelle asked, "Can't you see me as a love interest?" I felt my heartbeat speeding up. "You mean, like, you like me?" When I asked, Michelle nodded slightly. "Keith, you're so insensitive. You never noticed that I had a crush on you. That's why I agreed to pretend to be your girlfriend. I wanted to experience being your girlfriend even just for a day, and your parents were nice, and seeing you off work made me like you even more." I couldn't believe what was happening and asked, "What part of me do you like?" I ended up asking Michelle the same question my mom had asked her. "I already told you, but maybe that's not enough. I like every part of you that I know." Michelle's frank confession made my face burning. Just wait a moment. Let me park the car." I managed to calm myself down and safely reached her apartment's parking lot. I took a few more breaths and turned to Michelle. Will you be my girlfriend?" I asked Michelle. She smiled brightly and said, "Absolutely." That weekend, I took her out on a proper date and confessed my feelings again. I proposed to her and we got engaged. A year later, we were married. Until we announced it at work, no one realized we were dating, and many were quite surprised. Many envied me for marrying her, a woman who was the crush of many male colleagues. We sometimes visit my parents' home, and now it's a custom for us to eat my dad's meals. My wife loves my family's pork steaks. While watching her eat happily, I often feel a surge of happiness. My parents seem always happy being together, so I hope to maintain a good relationship with my wife, just like them. My wife also admires my parents as a couple. We're aiming to become a couple like them. How was today's story? Pressing the subscribe and like button will motivate us in our production activities. We're also looking forward to comments from everyone. See you in the next video. After 7 in the evening. Having finished a day's work, I headed straight home from the office. Lately, it's been a daily routine for me to head straight home like a homing pigeon as soon as work ends. Our home that we bought as a newly built house 10 years ago. I used to often grab a drink with colleagues after work. Overdrinking and coming home late, scolded by my wife, Susan, was not unusual. That wife is no longer here. She passed away from cancer 2 years ago. She was just 42 years old. Since then, I started coming straight home. My name is Mike. As I approached the front gate, I heard laughter from inside the house. My son, a 7th grader, my daughter in 4th grade, and Susan's sister, Jessica. In these 2 years since they lost their mother, Jessica has played a big part in making sure the kids haven't felt too lonely and recently helped bring back their smiles. Jessica, divorced 3 years ago, had moved back to her parents' house, about a 10-minute walk from ours. Since Susan's passing, she has been visiting us every day, helping with cooking, cleaning, and laundry, taking care of us, me and children. What was all the commotion about? I could hear loud laughter all the way outside. As I walked into the living room, taking off my suit jacket, Jessica immediately came over to me and apologized. "I'm sorry. I should have come out to greet you," and took the jacket from me to put it away. Because when I asked Aunt to whistle, she couldn't make a sound and made funny faces trying. My daughter said, clutching the belt of my trousers. Then, she urged me to whistle as well. Me, I can't blow. I tried but couldn't do it properly. Even after the kids retreated to their rooms, Jessica didn't leave. She began mending the children's clothes using the sewing machine Susan had bought. It's silly doing this nowadays, isn't it? We could just buy new ones. I checked on her, and she said that. But I want to do something for them, Jessica said, and picked up my cardigan with holes in it, which I was already going to throw away. Look, this one too. I watched her with mixed feelings. Nice sewing machine. Is it one of the newer models? Yes, probably, I replied. Susan bought it because she thought even she, who wasn't good at sewing, could use it. With this, she said, she could mend various things. But soon after the sewing machine arrived, Susan fell and never got to use it herself. It was during our son's school sports day. Our son came last in the 100-meter run. He joined us, shoulders slumped in disappointment, as we waited with lunch prepared. I teased him about coming in last and laughed. He sulked. Jessica then said, smiling, "Coming in last is still a kind of first place, isn't it, if you count from the back?" Our son nodded vigorously, perked up, and bit into the sandwich Jessica offered him. I exchanged glances with Jessica, who was smiling warmly, as I grinned at our unfazed son. "Susan, your sister Jessica is indeed remarkable," I murmured to my late wife, Susan, in my mind. Another year passed as Jessica continued to come to our home and became almost like a mother figure to our children. And then came the 3rd anniversary of Susan's death. I was summoned to the family home over there by Susan's father, my father-in-law, and Jessica. My father-in-law used to be the CEO of a publicly traded company. So, the house he lived in was quite impressive. Once I was led into the living room, my mother-in-law, who brought in some tea, spoke a few words to me and then quickly left the room. The father-in-law sitting in front of me had a serious expression, quite different from his usual casual attitude. The tense atmosphere had me on edge, wondering what was going on. "Mike, it's been 3 years since Susan passed away, hasn't it?" "Yes, time flies." My father-in-law nodded in silence. "I've been depending on Jessica ever since, and I feel so guilty for relying on her so much." As I bowed my head, my father-in-law leaned forward. "Is Jessica of any help at all?" I honestly replied that not only was she of help, she had taken over all the household chores, and it was all thanks to her that the kids hadn't felt lonely. "And you? What do you think of Jessica?" "I'm of course grateful. No matter how much I thank her, it doesn't seem enough." "Just grateful, huh?" I was at a loss for words, unable to grasp the meaning of his words. "So, are you willing to accept it?" "What?" I was taken aback by his unexpected words. Then, my father-in-law added, "Will you marry Jessica?" This time, I was too surprised to speak. He once again confirmed that I didn't have a girlfriend. "Won't you consider it?" He said it was fine if I didn't answer right away. He mentioned that both of us were not young. She's already in her mid-40s, and I'm almost 50. We are not strangers to each other, so he suggested why not be together. This was absolutely shocking to me. But my mind was made up from the start. There wasn't a shred of doubt. Jessica is Jessica. She is my wife's younger sister, my sister-in-law. That will never change. However, I hesitated to answer immediately and postponed my reply to my father-in-law. But then, an unexpected situation arose. I was diagnosed with cancer during the company's health checkup. It was like I was seeing everything go black, thinking that after my wife, now it was my turn. However, after detailed examination, the doctors assured it was in the very early stages and it would definitely be cured. So, I was hospitalized for about 10 days. On the first day of hospitalization, when Jessica, who had come to accompany me, was decorating my bedside table with flowers, I told her about the marriage proposal from her father. I was shocked. "It's Jessica and me, you know. Is that so?" She shrugged her shoulders and lowered her head. I was thinking about how to refuse while being hospitalized. I don't know if the timing is good or bad. When I jokingly mentioned it, she bowed deeply and apologized. "I'm sorry. It's not something you need to apologize for, Jessica." When I told her this, she shook her head. If I had endured more and not divorced, even my father. It was her father who had introduced her to her ex-husband. He was an employee at the company he valued, and Jessica had met him several times before deciding that she could marry him. However, once they started their married life, it became apparent that his intentions were to win over his father-in-law, who was the CEO. He often left home and had a bad reputation among women. Moreover, he acted irresponsibly in the company, taking advantage of his position as the CEO's son-in-law. My father, he was deceived by him too. After the divorce, he had apologized to her when she returned to her parents' home. So, I think my father feels guilty towards me. That's why he made such a request to you. I too had, vaguely, heard not so good things about Jessica's ex-husband. I can understand your father's feelings, but a relationship between you and me is out of the question. When I blurted this out, she turned to me resolutely. Exactly, you're absolutely right. I'll convey this to my father. Yeah, no, but wait, I'll say it myself when things settle down. I was the one who had received the consultation from my father-in-law. I thought it was proper for me to respond myself. The day of discharge arrived. Jessica had offered to come to help, but I politely declined. Having nothing to do during my hospitalization, I spent the day lost in thought. I wondered if my indulgence with Jessica was the reason my father-in-law had come up with such an absurd idea. Therefore, I decided it was best to gradually distance myself from Jessica. I took a taxi from the hospital to my home. I called Jessica on the way. It's all right, you don't need to be here tonight. I'll order some pizza, the kid's favorite, as a celebration for my discharge. When I conveyed this, she quietly responded, understood. That night, as I had told her, while having delivery pizza for dinner, I asked my children if anything had changed at home while I was hospitalized. We were totally fine even without you, Dad. Really? Even my daughter nodded yes in agreement, so I burst into laughter with the kids. I could tell that both my son and my daughter were genuinely happy that I had returned safely. However, Auntie was acting a bit strange. My daughter mentioned as if she just remembered. When I asked how strange, It turned out she had been drinking alcohol in the kitchen while preparing dinner. My son agreed. As far as I knew, Jessica was not exactly a heavy drinker, and she never actively chose to drink. I didn't know what had happened to Jessica, but I had an intuition. I was sure it had something to do with the marriage talk between her and me that my father-in-law had brought up. The next day, I contacted my father-in-law as soon as I could. He too had something he wanted to talk to me about. I heard it from Jessica. She wants you to stop worrying unnecessarily. She's concerned you are troubled because of me. Even though I had asked her to keep it a secret, she had spoken to my father-in-law. He apologized, wishing the talks of marriage with her had never happened. I was more worried about Jessica. So, I told him what I heard from the kids. Eventually, I must have pressured Jessica about marriage, not once but twice. She was drowning her sorrows with liquor because of this. My father-in-law told me not to worry anymore because he had called off the marriage proposal with me. I requested him to convey to Jessica that she doesn't need to visit us every day as before. My father-in-law, agreeing, hesitated a bit before starting. Actually, this was about 6 months before my wife Susan passed away. When work finished earlier than planned, he visited Susan, and they were left alone. "Hey, Dad, I have a favor to ask." Susan apparently approached him. She had a request regarding me and the kids for after she was gone. He tried to encourage her, telling her not to be faint-hearted, but it seemed that she had come to terms with the fact that she didn't have much longer to live. "After I'm gone, Dad, could you mediate between my family and Jessica?" He was dumbfounded by Susan's words. However, Susan continued calmly, lying on her bed, gazing at the ceiling. She can entrust the kids to her younger sister Jessica with peace of mind. Indeed, the kids had warmed up to Jessica, who often visited us. He was at a loss for words. He could have just agreed to soothe his suffering daughter. But he couldn't do that. To him, Susan nearing the end of her life, and Jessica seeking new happiness, were both his daughters. He couldn't casually agree without considering Jessica's feelings. While he was lost for words, Susan spoke again. "Also, it seems Jessica likes him, and not in a strange way," she said. According to Susan, Jessica often said this before she got divorced. How she wished her husband was a man like me. How she wanted to marry a man like me. He fumbled for words to respond to Susan. Then Susan, with a smile, said to him, "If he finds someone he loves, I'm fine with it, but it's still painful. I'm not that magnanimous, but if it's Jessica, maybe I can accept it." In the end, the discussion about marrying Jessica originated from my late wife, Susan. I felt infuriated after parting with my father-in-law. At him, at Jessica, and most of all, at my deceased wife Susan. I returned home with this rage. The moment I got back home, my daughter came to me and started fussing. "Auntie isn't coming, I'm hungry," clinging to me. I handed some money to my son and told them to go eat whatever they liked. Then, I went to the back room unconsciously and stood before the sewing machine Susan had bought. She bought it saying that even though she was bad at sewing, this machine would allow her to mend things. What is there to mend? In a fit of rage, I picked up the sewing machine and threw it against the wall with all my strength. I collapsed on the spot as all my strength drained away. And I cried. The next Sunday. That day the sky was clear from the morning. I decided to have a barbecue in the yard with the kids. The three of us went to the supermarket for groceries. When we were coming back, reaching our house, Jessica was standing at the gate. Seeing her, my daughter ran towards her immediately. My son stayed beside me, looking shy and awkward. "I'm here," she said in a soft voice. I nodded and invited her inside. The kids were absorbed in the barbecue. Jessica and I sat on the porch, watching them. It was a typical Sunday afternoon scene, one you could find in any home. I spoke to your father. She nodded affirmatively. Did you know too, Jessica, about what Susan was thinking? When I asked, she shook her head in denial. Then, she rushed to where the children were absorbed in grilling the barbecue. In the meantime, I brought a can of beer from the kitchen refrigerator. I intended to bring one just for me but brought one more for her. Hey, don't grill everything at once. Your aunt and I are going to take it slow. While calling out to the kids and sitting back on the porch, Jessica placed some grilled barbecue on a small plate beside me. I received the plate and offered her the can of beer in return. Thank you, but I'll pass on the alcohol. It's fine. Have some. It goes well with the barbecue. It's surely delicious. She accepted the can of beer I insisted on. And we both opened the pull tabs at the same time. I didn't start coming here because someone asked me to. She began to talk before sipping the beer. It was her own will to visit us. She always admired and idealized our family. She thought she could have it someday. But divorce made that dream impossible. I wanted a family like yours. She continued with a sigh. So I went to your house just to fill the hole in my heart after my divorce, just for myself. She said and gulped down the beer. After that, she visited our house several times a month and helped with household chores and the kids. But we rarely had the chance to meet in person. Strangely, a feeling of loneliness started to grow in my heart when I couldn't meet her. That's right, you said this would patch up various things. In front of the sewing machine left thrown against the wall in anger the other night, I talked to my wife, Susan. Like mending with this sewing machine, were you trying to patch up the hole that could appear in me and the kids after you were gone? There's no need for such worry anymore. I bowed my head with gratitude towards the sewing machine lying against the wall, and to my wife, who I believed was watching over somewhere. Then, I plucked up the courage and called her. And I thanked Jessica again for all the time she had spent filling in for Susan, who had passed away. But let's stop this, all right. Such things. Why am I a bother? She uttered in a flustered voice. No, it's not that. So first off, let's drop the brother, okay? She fell silent. I'll stop calling you Jessica too. Let's start with Jess at first. So, can you call me by my first name, too? While I was nervously waiting for her reply, she responded, all right, Mike. Do you guys envy having childhood friends? I often hear people say that just being childhood friends is enough to make them fall in love, or that they envy the girls for being so close. But in reality, being childhood friends can sometimes hinder the development into romance and can bring its own set of challenges. Today, I'll share my story. My name is Tyler. My life, well, it was often envied by others, especially by other guys. Because I have a childhood friend of the same age. Her name is Anna. I honestly can't remember when Anna and I started hanging out. By the time I realized it, she was already by my side. Our houses are next to each other, and our parents are friends. As a matter of course, we were close as a family, playing together and going to and from school together. It's like having a sister living next door, a presence that is expected to be there. That was Anna for me. She is cute, has a good personality, and is caring. So having such a childhood friend, I was often envied. But to me, she is a childhood friend and family. So even when others envied us, I didn't find anything special about it because being childhood friends means being too close, which has its perks. Also, Our rooms are right next to each other. Open the window, and you can easily see each other's faces. It's coincidental, but thanks to that, we talked almost every day even though we went to different high schools, and since I am not a morning person, Anna woke me up every morning. Her way of waking me up was quite unique. There are romantic comedies where childhood friends come into the room through the window because their houses are close, but it's dangerous. No matter how close, it's the second floor. It would be disastrous if an accident occurred. So, the method Anna adopted was, she used to knock on my window with a broomstick. "Tyler, it's morning. Wake up," Anna would say and wake me up. My mornings always started with Anna's voice, and it continued even when we each got a girlfriend or a boyfriend. You'd think, why don't you stop when you get a girlfriend or a boyfriend? But we are family, so we have nothing to be guilty of. That's why we could do it. Well, I wouldn't recommend it though, as it may be misunderstood. So Anna and I were always together. Even when we went to different schools or got jogs, our bond continued. As adults, we also went out for drinks every Friday. The best companion to share our complaints about being new to the workforce. Our relationship settled as family, without progressing into anything more. Even as we became adults and quite some time had passed, it remained unchanged. Darn, I got dumped again. The drinking sessions that used to be gripe fests with Anna had lately turned into occasions for her to listen to my complaints. Well, occasionally, it's Anna who does the complaining. However, overwhelmingly, I tend to be the one complaining more. Moreover, the content is usually about being dumped by my girlfriend, such "are you a teenager or something" kind of stuff. Well, that was fast. Didn't you guys just start dating last month? Yeah, I thought this time it would last more than 3 months. I was reasonably popular at the time and had a girlfriend. But for some reason, it never lasted long, breaking up within 3 months no matter how hard I tried. At first I was in shock, crying and drinking, but lately I was drinking out of desperation because I had been rejected so many times. Anna, with a bemused smile, would comfort me in such times. "So, why did you get dumped this time? Wasn't it cheating last time?" "This time," she said, "I was boring." Haha, that's quite a harsh comment, isn't it? Anna shrugs and laughs at my response. With a laugh, she says, "Cheer up," handing me my favorite dish. Anna has grown into a beautiful and kind-hearted adult. Yet, she didn't have a boyfriend. But it was not because her relationships didn't last, she simply remained single. In other words, she was the opposite of me. That's why she brushed off my complaints with a laugh, and that's why I found it easy to talk to her. Do I really come off as that boring? I do try to surprise her and all. Maybe your surprises aren't hitting the mark. Ack. I was at a loss for words. Because I was terrible at surprises. No matter how hard I tried, somehow it came up empty. For instance, if I give flowers to a girl, she turns out to have allergies and can't stop sneezing, and gets really mad afterward, or if I book a restaurant for our anniversary, she calls it too overbearing. Nothing ever went right. But breaking up in just 1 month is still shocking. Sigh, I'm done. I'll just distract myself with my hobbies. Hobbies? I've gotten into camping recently. It's fun. Yes, I've recently discovered the joy of the outdoors. Being in the vastness of nature, setting up my own tent, and living there. Facing the overwhelming nature made my own worries seem trivial, and I could truly feel I'm alive. That feeling was incredibly refreshing, and I've become quite hooked, going camping repeatedly. When I told Anna about it, her eyes widened. Well, I've wanted to try it, but it's risky for a woman to camp alone. I'm so jealous. So, want to come along? Really, can I? Anna was surprisingly interested, so with the pure thought of I can have a camping buddy, I invited her to camp. I have most of the necessary stuff, so I asked Anna to prepare personal items like changes of clothes and sleeping bags. I gave her a proper list, and she said, "Yay, I'm looking forward to it," with excitement. I too was eagerly anticipating the camping trip with Anna. When the camping day finally arrived, it was a beautifully clear day, perfect for camping. Moreover, we were fortunate to secure a very good spot, elevating my spirits. With both the weather and the scenery so nice, Anna was equally thrilled. "Amazing, such a beautiful view. Cool, isn't it? Yeah, thanks for bringing me to such a wonderful place." Anna is in high spirits, shining a sparkling smile my way. Her smile under the clear blue sky was breathtaking. For a moment, I was struck. Wait, was Anna always this gorgeous? Sure, she's beautiful, but I had never seen her as a member of the opposite sex before. So, I hadn't recognized her beauty. "What's wrong, Tyler?" Caught off guard by her beauty, I looked away when Anna tilts her head and looks at me. Being in a place rich in nature, different from the city, made her face stand out more, causing me to avert my eyes. "No, it's nothing. Let's set up the tent. It will require some effort, so can you check the food supplies, make sure nothing's spoiled?" "All right, understood." To keep distance, I reluctantly asked Anna to check the food. It's just because of this place that I am seeing Anna in a special light. Or so I thought, as I set up the tent, but my heart was racing more than usual. No, Anna is family. Not in a romantic way. Or, I wasn't supposed to be. But, wow, Tyler, you can do anything. It's nothing. Just a nag to set up a tent. Don't be modest. I respect you because I can't set it up as neatly. Just by receiving praise from Anna, who usually takes care of me, I felt overjoyed. So, I tried a bit harder. I strived to look cool while camping. For example, when we were making hot sandwiches, Anna, struggling with the sandwich maker, said, "How does this work, Tyler? Help," as she came to me with a sandwich maker jammed with overstuffed ingredients. "Hey, you put too much. If you do that, it won't close, you know." Laughingly teaching her how to use it and the right amount to put in. When I finished setting up the meal while she was working on other stuff, she was extremely surprised. "What, you've already done?" Since Anna was a camping newbie, there were things she didn't know. I wanted her to purely enjoy camping today, so I acted a bit, rather very cool. But because of that, I used to think everything I ate out was good, but what you cooked for me tasted the best. It made my efforts worthwhile. Taking the lead in camping, teaching her the ropes, seeing Anna laugh so joyfully. Usually, Anna looks after me, but I found myself wanting to see her smile all day, and before I knew it, I was looking after her during the camp. Trying hard to see her smile, before I realized it, it was already dusk. The time flew by so fast, it felt a little lonely. Gathering around the campfire, thinking the day was already over. It was fun today, thank you, Tyler. Please, let's go camping again. When Anna said that, I felt I wanted to be with her like today, always. We've lived like family all along, always together. But I didn't want that kind of together. I wanted to be a real family with Anna. That's what I felt. But this feeling is probably too late. Until recently, I've considered Anna family. Surely, she must feel the same. That's why she came camping with me. She doesn't see me as a man. Knowing this makes me so sad. I found myself murmuring while staring at the campfire. It would be nice if we could always be together like today. I found myself muttering that. Honestly, I thought I had blown it. I would be told, "We're always together, aren't we?" But contrary to my expectation, there was no response from Anna. I looked at Anna, wondering why. She was blushing more than the campfire. Yeah, I'm taken aback by the response, and I can't help but blurt out in surprise. It was completely unexpected, and I was bewildered too, but Anna bashfully says, "Don't say such things here, it'll give the wrong impression." Anna said that and looked down. Misunderstanding. No, could it be? What? I nearly fell off my chair in turmoil, hastily steadying myself. Seeing this, Anna sighs deeply. Really, I've thought this all along. I would never dump Tyler in just a few months, and I know all your good and bad points. I knew. You only see me as family. That's why you could invite me camping, right? Realize it already, dummy. I'm not the kind of girl to spend a day with a guy who has no interest. She said this, ears red, and looked at me. Those eyes were indeed very feminine, and I caught my breath. Since when? Well, probably around the time we became adults. I was shocked when I heard you got a girlfriend. That's when I realized. Anna, maybe feeling desperate, opens up to me. It seemed the catalyst for Anna starting to be conscious of me was our regular meetings. Meeting and talking with me nearly every week, sometimes complaining about problems. I accepted all of her, never showing any displeasure, even with her near malicious complaints. Anna could show her true self to me. Others are interested only in the beautiful, cute, and gentle me, but you were different. You never rejected any part of me, and I was happy for it. But Anna knew I didn't see her as the opposite sex. So she wanted to stay by my side at least as family, and had always been a good family member to me. When I realized that, I felt my face getting hot. Anna had been caring about me all this time. I'm ashamed I didn't notice it, and I don't want to make Al endure anymore. Anna, I'm sorry, because I didn't notice. It's fine, really. It was me who fell in love with you. I don't want to make you feel that way anymore. I know it's convenient, but Anna, I thought you looked really beautiful today. I want to become a real family with you, so, will you be my girlfriend? My voice echoes well in the quiet night of the campsite. But I was desperate. I wonder if Anna understood my words. She smiled happily and says, "Finally, I've been waiting for those words." She said this and hugged me. I was such a fool not to notice someone so important so close to me. I will make her happy for the rest of her life. I made up my mind. Well, it seems the camping will end on a good note, but life doesn't always go well. What do we do? Seriously. Just before going to bed, we realized the sleeping bag Anna brought was broken. The zipper won't open, and when Anna tried to force it opened somehow, but only half of it. If it broke and couldn't be zipped up, it could be used as a blanket. This halfway open state means you can only put one leg inside. This defeats the purpose of a sleeping bag. I have a pretty large sleeping bag, and if we try hard, Anna can fit in it. But I thought of lending Anna my sleeping bag, but Anna would feel uncomfortable. So I hesitantly ask, "Get in." Then Anna, with her face red, nods. Man, what a situation. Sleeping in the same sleeping bag on the first night of being together. But well, nothing untoward. After all, the sleeping bag was just the right size. And doing anything in this place would be disrespecting Anna's parents, who treated me like family, and above all, my dad would say, "What are you doing?" and might punch me. So, I swear firmly in my heart not to do anything. I'm sorry, Tyler. It's tight, isn't it? Not at all. It feels just right. I say that, and Anna, smiling, says, "That's the kind of kindness I love. Good night." And she goes to sleep, leaving such a bombshell. Come on, give me a break. This is, tight in many ways, but I'm a man. I'll endure. Our first camping trip went well. Our relationship also changed a lot. In fact, it progressed quickly because we were practically together. Of course, we both dated with marriage in mind, and we soon met each other's parents, but both my and Anna's parents were friends, so there was no opposition. On the contrary, Tyler is like a son to us. We're glad to have him as a part of our family. We're so happy to have Anna as our daughter. There's nothing more joyful than this, and with that, the joy was immense. It was a festive atmosphere, and the meeting of both families didn't differ much from usual family outings. Well then, my parents and Anna's parents were overjoyed and offered us some incredible drinks, which was nice. And then, I proposed to her after dating for 1 year. Please stay with me forever. It was such a cliché, but I surprised her with her favorite flowers and a ring. I'm happy you remembered my favorite flowers. I love you so much. You have to make me happy or I'll be mad, she said, shedding tears as she slid the ring onto my finger. We were too close to realize, but we were each other's irreplaceable and important existence. Realizing this took some time, but I have no regrets if I can spend my lifetime with Anna. Anna felt the same, as did our families. Our relationship was an open book to our parents, and they, like us, often went out for drinks. They would even visit each other's homes for drinking parties. At those times, they would talk about the parent thing, wondering what they would do if our children brought home a partner. And it seems that they each thought the ideal partner for their child was the other's child. They wished that we would get together already and discussed it amongst themselves. Really, outsiders have their own thoughts. That's why their wishes became reality, and they were probably so happy, thanks to which I didn't have to use the common greeting, "May I have your daughters in marriage?" So, with many detours, we finally became united. Now, what do you all think after hearing this? If you think having a childhood friend is nice, beware. Having a childhood friend can be troublesome. For example, on days we fight, the dining table is filled with food I dislike, and since we've been together since childhood, we can understand each other's thoughts, making surprises almost impossible to pull off. There are struggles unique to knowing each other so well. But that also means we understand and support each other when tired or troubled. This is where our story begins, but of course, it's not the end. I'll be with Anna forever and ever, and live happily. That's my wish and my life goal. I met her during my solo vacation. We seated next to each other on the ferry, and later reunited at one of the few tourist spots on the island. Let's get married. Upon our reunion, she said that to me. My name is Zach, turned 32 this year. I work in the editorial department of a publishing company. I love my job and don't mind working through the night or doing overtime. Unfortunately, the body tells no lies. My body and stamina couldn't keep up with the demands of the job. To make matters worse, the workload suddenly increased as a long-serving editor retired, and the responsibilities were passed down to me, a mid-level employee. One day, I passed out at work. I was told by the doctor it was due to overwork and stress, and I had to be hospitalized for about a week. Work was hectic, but fortunately, my fairly considerate company managed to send a notice aligning with my discharge day. Apparently, my attending doctor also suggested that I needed a break. And so, for the first time since I started working, I got a long 6-month vacation. I was undecided about how to spend this long vacation, but I decided to visit the northernmost and southernmost parts of the country. I first conquered the northernmost part, Barrow, Alaska. Then I headed straight to Key West, Florida. The southernmost part is Catalina Island. There's a ferry service from Miami, but the ferry couldn't sail due to bad weather. I was stuck there for 4 days. Finally, on the morning of the 5th day, the ferry to the island could depart. The sea was still a bit rough. I usually have a strong stomach and don't get motion sickness, but I was a bit nervous and took some motion sickness medicine. As I expected, the ferry swayed quite a bit. Sitting by the window, I pressed my forehead against the window glass and closed my eyes tightly. By doing this, I was trying to avoid seasickness. When there were 20 minutes left to reach the island, I noticed the woman sitting next to me looked unwell. It seems she was suffering from seasickness. Are you okay? Would you like to take some motion sickness medicine? When I offered her water, she weakly replied, I'm fine. She didn't look fine at all. Thinking it might make her feel a bit better, I offered my window seat to her. Then she did the same as me, pressing her forehead against the window glass and closing her eyes. It looked like she was feeling uncomfortable, and her collar was wide open, revealing her fair chest. I realized I was staring and awkwardly looked away. I helped her off the ferry. She was still wobbly, looking pretty unstable. She sat down on the ground after getting off the ramp. The ground is the best, she said, laying down right there. Are you okay? I squatted down beside her and asked. She managed to sit up, still shaky. Thank you so much. It was rough this time, but you saved me. Thank you. She bowed her head politely to thank me. Her long hair slid over her shoulders, emitting a pleasant fragrance of shampoo. Here on vacation? She asked, brushing the sand off her back. I nodded, and she responded with something that was neither interested nor uninterested. I see. I somewhat wanted to stay but forced myself to leave. Well, I'll go then. You sure you're good? She responded with a full-faced smile to my inquiry. Regretfully, I parted ways with her at the harbor. I really wanted to talk more with her, but I didn't have the courage. I felt pathetic, thinking that I should be enjoying myself more while on vacation. While contemplating returning to the harbor, I arrived at the reserved bed and breakfast. Catalina Island is a small. You could cycle around the entire island. The next day, I started exploring the island by rental bike. Sadly, the weather was not clear. The sea seemed rough too. It seemed the ferry from Miami was canceled again. Probably because of that, there weren't many tourists on the island. It felt like time was moving slowly. I headed for the southernmost monument of America. Passing through a winding road like a snake, I could see the southernmost monument of America. There were no buildings around, but I could see several other monuments. There were sound of waves, wind, and occasionally, birds. The wind was strong and I closed my eyes for a moment. When I opened them again, there was someone by the monument, waving at me. I didn't know anyone here. My heart skipped a beat for a moment. Thank you for yesterday. She was waving, shouting in a voice that won over the wind. It wasn't a mistake. The girl from yesterday was waving at me. I refrained from running and approached her slowly. How did you know I'd be here? Well, what other places are there to see around here? She said with a smile. I felt a bit embarrassed as she thanked me again, politely, for yesterday. She introduced herself as I'm Nancy. Oh, this is for your help yesterday. You haven't had lunch yet, have you? Nancy said, offering me a package wrapped in newspaper. It felt heavy in my hand. Not many diners open now, right? I thought you haven't eaten lunch. It's a packed lunch. Opening the newspaper, I found a lunchbox with sandwiches inside. I felt warm inside, thinking she must have made it for me. Thank you, I was getting a bit hungry. I thanked her and she smiled, handing me a water bottle. Maybe she means to eat here. We sat a little away from the monument and opened the lunchbox. Nancy casually picked up one of the sandwiches. They looked like typical homemade Southern American style sandwich. Nancy, munching on her sandwich before me, looked happy. Is your family from this island? When I asked, she replied, no. She seems to have come relying on a friend living on the island. She said it had been a long time since she visited. That's when I noticed a ring shining on her left ring finger. My mood suddenly dropped. Making a lunchbox and waiting for me, it's easy to misunderstand. But she was flaunting evidence of being a married woman on her finger. It was a proof that she has no interest in me. As my spirits dropped, the weather also started to deteriorate. Nancy was looking seriously at the increasingly rough sea. Maybe she's worried about the return ferry. If the sea gets rough, it will destroy this amazing scenery. I, who wanted to spend time gazing at the beautiful sea, wondered if Nancy felt the same and spoke up. Her response was something I didn't expect. Nancy said, "I hope it gets rougher." She smiled, hoping for a ferry cancellation due to rough seas. But I noticed her eyes weren't smiling. It felt like she had some secret. Like she was afraid someone might come to the island by ferry. Maybe she ran away to this island. I stealthily looked at her anxious face. I wanted to say something to cheer her up, but no words came to mind. "Well, I'm going home. It looks like it's going to rain." Staring out at the sea, now rough and turbulent, Nancy stood up and spoke those words. All I could do was nod in agreement, murmuring, "Yes, true." Despite Nancy's wishes, the next day was bright and sunny. The sea was calm. Almost instinctively, I opened my cell phone to check the ferry schedules. It seemed that they were all running from the first trip in the morning. That someone whom she did not want might be coming to this island on the ferry. Thinking about it started to make me anxious, too. To shake off the anxiety, I decided to go for a walk after breakfast. The sun was much more intense compared to yesterday. While wandering aimlessly around the island, I could hear a man and a woman arguing. Without much thought, I headed in the direction of the voices. The scene was in front of a small house. There was a flashy, flamboyant guy raising his voice at someone. Nancy was standing in front of him with a sullen expression. Apparently, this man was Nancy's husband. I realized this must be the unwelcome someone that she was avoiding. Something must have happened, and Nancy had run away from her husband. Facing her loud, furious husband, Nancy remained cold. I couldn't intervene in a marital spat, so I decided to quietly leave the place. "I'm telling you, I've had enough. I can't stand being hit or abused by you anymore." Nancy's voice, which was calm initially, was getting increasingly louder. Hearing her speak about being regularly abused, I stopped in my tracks. If her husband was violent towards Nancy, I felt I had to intervene. "Just shut up and come back home. You are making me chase you all the way out here." Her husband's shouting became louder and louder. I suddenly noticed a flashy woman wearing sunglasses sitting in a car that he apparently drove here in. She was watching the quarreling pair from the car, looking bored. "You came all the way here. What were you thinking? Bringing your affair partner to take your wife back? Planning a romantic getaway on the side?" Nancy pointed at the car as she spoke. I see. The woman in the car seemed to be the husband's mistress. Things were starting to feel complicated. "That's it. Please, let's get a divorce." At this word, her husband reacted. His face turned bright red, and he tried to drag Nancy by her arm toward the car. "It hurts. Let me go. Are you planning to lock me up again? I'm not a pet. Let go of me. You should just wait for me at home and shut up. Don't think there's any more happiness in this world." I couldn't just stand there and watch. I had to step in between them and knock his hand away. He suddenly gave me a suspicious glare as I interrupted abruptly. "Leave her alone. She doesn't want this," I said to him, shielding Nancy behind me. He clicked his tongue, asking, "Who are you?" I replied that I was her friend. I told him that I had heard their conversation, and it's wrong to forcefully take her home when she is refusing to do so. What the heck? Aren't you having an affair too? Do you think you are in a position to say anything about my affairs? Apparently, he misunderstood me as Nancy's lover. He laughs, making fun of Nancy. Moreover, he began to berating Nancy and said, "This is what you get with such a flirty woman. Don't speak so ill of her." I couldn't keep calm anymore, seeing how he insulted her. He reached over my shoulder and grabbed Nancy's hair. Nancy, being pulled forcefully by her hair, almost toppled forward. "It hurts. Let me go." He pushed me aside and tried to take Nancy away. To be clear, I'm not the fighting type. I'm terrible at confrontations. But this is not the time to back down. I got up and took Nancy back just before she was made to get into the car. I quarreled with her husband next to the car. Nancy stepped in between to separate us. "I am divorcing you." This time, it was my turn to be shielded by Nancy. With her arms spread out, she was staring him down while shielding me behind her. "What will you do after divorcing? Marry this guy?" he said with a mocking tone. The next moment, Nancy turned around, smiling warmly at me. And looking into my eyes, she said, "Let's get married." I was taken aback. But the words that came out were, "Yes, gladly." I was astounded by our exchange as if we were in a fast food restaurant. But it seemed my reply was the right answer for Nancy. She hugged me around the neck with a big smile, saying thank you. "Did you hear that? I've fallen for this man. So, I want a divorce. I've never met such a kind person. I can't be with you anymore." Hanging onto my neck, Nancy turned around and yelled back at him. I braced to be hit by him again at that moment. However, that moment never came. Because he, who had been so high-handed, collapsed at Nancy's words. He sat down on the spot, his shoulders shaking. I thought he was shaking with anger, but, to my surprise, he started shedding tears. "Huh?" Utterly astounded, I let out a dumbfounded gasp, staring blankly at her husband, who had started to cry out loud. It's rare to see a grown man cry out loud. While her husband was sobbing, Nancy was watching him with a clearly disgusted look. Then, she swiftly pulls off the ring from her ring finger and throws it at the weeping husband. "Think crying will get you forgiveness? You really never grow up." Nancy looks down at her husband with a contemptuous gaze. I heard later it was always this pattern. He'd imprison Nancy in the house, using violence to ensure she met no one. Then when she'd lose her temper, he'd cry and apologize. He could have affairs freely outside. When Nancy brought up divorce, he flew into a rage and became violent. And he finally clings to Nancy, sobbing. No wonder Nancy wanted to escape. Even her husband's current fling, sitting in the car, was taken aback seeing him bawl. "I remember when you were kind." This was the end of the road for a selfish man who thought a gentle Nancy would forgive everything. At Nancy's words, her husband's crying becomes even louder. "I'll have my attorney contact you about the details. Don't ever come near me again," Nancy declared, leaving her sobbing husband behind. She tightly grips my hand and starts walking. When I look at her profile, she's firmly closing her mouth and staring ahead. "Hey, did you really fall for me?" I ask Nancy, who is walking and looking straight ahead. Nancy just answers, "Yes." I remember feeling the temperature of the hand I was holding rise slightly at that moment. So, I didn't ask any more. She probably wasn't lying. I was sure of it. "Hey, let me say it too." She stops at my words and looks up at me with upturned eyes. Her eyes were wavering, seeming a bit anxious. It looks like she's afraid of being rejected by me. "I've liked you since the first time we met." I think I will never forget Nancy's face turning red up to her ears the next moment. It's been 10 years since then. Nancy's fierceness back then was something else. I shiver just thinking about it. We're visiting this Catalina island, the place where we first met after a long time. Brings back memories. Next to me, Nancy, with my wedding ring shining on her finger, says this and smiles. I honestly tell her that seeing the ring on her ring finger back then had completely bummed me out. Nancy teases me with a really and a playful laugh. What happened to the ring that you threw away? That ring. It was embedded in the ground. The next day, Nancy said she found the ring embedded in the ground and stepped on it. She laughed uproariously, saying it might come out if dug up. Immediately after that event, we hired a lawyer and proceeded with the divorce process. Her ex-husband wouldn't agree to the divorce, so in the end, it came down to mediation. I wanted to marry her right away, but the divorce took about a year to finalize. I officially proposed to her the night the divorce was finalized. And happily, we get married a year later. It felt like a long journey. Now, blessed with 2 kids, we are a happy family of 4. We have our occasional fights, but that's part of the charm. I think I'm the one who usually gives in during our arguments. Hey, Mom, Dad, come here. Over here, over here. Our children call us with loud voices. Our daughter takes after me, and our son is the spitting image of Nancy. Their personalities are also similar, which makes us laugh. We walk towards our waving children, hand in hand. Okay, time for a quiz. The word quiz excites the kids. So, what kind of place is this? My question is met with voices of dissatisfaction from the kids. It's too easy and not interesting, they complain. Then our daughter snorted and answered. Don't play dumb. It's the southernmost part of America, right? I told her with a composed face, no, that's not right. And once again, there are boos from the children. This is where your mom first let your dad taste her homemade lunchbox. My daughter hits my knee in frustration as I speak jokingly. We didn't know that. The children unanimously voice their complaints. Next to them, Nancy, looking a bit guilty, is smiling. What? I sense she has a secret. Then, scratching her head, Nancy said, actually, that lunch was made by my friend. A truth I learned after 10 years. The kids roll over, laughing hysterically. The beautiful memory shatters, leaving me stunned for a moment. So this is what they mean by truth is stranger than fiction. Come to think of it, Nancy was bad at cooking. I didn't notice about that lunchbox until now. I guess I was just head over heels for her.